So if you're a sports fan and you've been on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, any of those big social media platforms in the last 12 or 24 hours, really if you've just been alive, you've probably heard news about this European Super League that's been created. It's something that's been rumored for a long time. It's nothing new by any stretch of the imagination, but it's the first time since the concept became a thing that we have a physical understanding of what it looks like, and it was announced last night by the 12 founding members. And it seems like the more we find out about this European Super League, the bigger a disaster it looks to be. If you're not familiar with what this Super League is all about, I'll leave some links in the description below if you want to read more into it. But basically what it is, it's 12 of Europe's biggest clubs, which includes England's Big Six, which is Manchester City, Manchester United, Spurs, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, along with Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, and Milan, Inter Milan, and Juventus, have all banded together to create their own exclusionary league, basically, that is expected to rival the Champions League or take it over, or who knows. All we do know is that it is arguably the most obvious and egregious cash grab that I've seen since I became a soccer fan to begin with. And there are so many things wrong with this Super League, and I'll dive into a couple of them in this video. But I think the biggest issue that I have with this news is just how blatantly obvious these owners have made it that greed and money trumps everything. It trumps history, it trumps tradition, it trumps the desire of the fans, it trumps everything, because this league is everything about it just screams money and wealth. And the teams that were picked, the 12 teams that were picked, are like 12 of the 14 richest clubs on the planet. It's so obvious that this is just some ploy for the rich to get richer, and for the poorer clubs and the ones that are struggling to break even to continue to barely tread water. And the reason why I say that is because if you're not familiar with the financial structure of European football, I'll use England as an example. There are hundreds of football clubs in England, and most football fans, at least ones like myself in the United States, know the top. They know the best, the ones in the Premier League. But there's so much underneath the surface, and they all rely on the top divisions, mostly the Premier League, to generate revenue that trickles its way down. And most of that revenue comes from the big clubs. It comes from Spurs, Arsenal, Man U, Man City, Liverpool, and Chelsea. And so their decision to get up and go and create something else so they can get richer is, as a product, putting these other 100, 200 plus clubs in financial jeopardy, because now that revenue is gone. The revenue is out the door. Such a big chunk of that financial structure is gone, especially when now the TV deals and the sponsorships and everything are going to go and join on with this Super League and leave the domestic leagues in the dust. This puts so many small clubs in danger in a pandemic when so many are already struggling to break even. That's what is one of the things that's so cynical about it, I think, is that these 12 billionaires don't care. They've banded together to create this thing that generates more money, and it turns the top of football into an exclusionary group of whoever they deem worthy enough to be competing in it. Because these 12 teams that were selected aren't the objective 12 best clubs in Europe at the moment. If we're talking about the 12 best clubs in Europe, Spurs and Arsenal should be in the next town over. Are you kidding me? It's disappointing to me to see such an open and obvious attempt to essentially buy the top of European football, to purchase what has always been something that you earned through sporting merit, that those accolades at the top, when you beat the best teams in the world, it's being bought out by people like Florentino Perez and the Glazers and the Kroenkes and all these people who are businessmen first and football presidents and CEOs second. And it's very obviously creating this exclusionary league at the top of European football that makes it so much more difficult for every other club in Europe not involved to find long-term consistent success. This proposal turns the top of European football into this elitist closed society who are deemed worthy to compete in it by some handful of random billionaires who say, no, you've got enough money to come join us. And the guise of having five, for lack of a better phrase, at-large teams that will cycle in based on merit. I mean, what's that worth? You've got 20 or 30 leagues in Europe competing for five places who, even when they get there, will finish 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th anyway, because they haven't had the years of this European Super League backing that the other 15 clubs will have. So it's all just one big cash grab. And that's one of the most disappointing things about it, because that has never been, well, I shouldn't say that, but that is at least from a fan's perspective, and based on the history of the game up until very, very recently, it's been about the tradition and the history, and stuff like this gets rid of that. It eliminates any chance of a Leicester, for example. And I know Leicester is an example that's being used over and over and over again. And yes, it is kind of a weird circumstance, and it shouldn't be looked at as the holy grail of reasoning why this deal shouldn't go through. But they are a perfect example, because if this style league was enacted 5, 6, 7 years ago, we don't know who Leicester City are. Or most soccer fans don't know who Leicester City are, because they wouldn't have won the league at 5,000 to 1 odds. That opportunity wouldn't have been made available to them. Atalanta came out of nowhere 2 years ago. They were 17th or the 18th highest wage budget in Serie A. They were one of those smallest payrolls, and they finished fourth and earned their way into the Champions League. And something like this eliminates that entirely, because you've got your 15 set in stone, who, by the way, are receiving $400 million just for joining. I mean, it's unbelievable how quickly this league, if carried out, will expand the wealth inequality in European football any more than it already is. And another issue that I have with this league is that it destroys what I think makes football as a whole so unique, which is the fact that your success largely is based only on merit, on sporting merit. And that's what Leicester and Atalanta did. Leicester, on sporting merit, earned their promotion to the Premier League, won the league, and earned their spot in the Champions League. Atalanta earned their spot in the top four and earned their way to the Champions League. Even deeper than that, though. I mean, it's the reason why football is so fascinating to me is because it's a sport where if you do well, you will earn your step up. You will earn your promotion. You will finish in a top 6 place. You will play European football if you're good enough. Whereas in American sports, it's largely, and this is not a knock. It's just different. In American sports, when you're talking about a new team in a league, the question is, what's the best market? Where can I drop down a stadium to generate the most revenue? That's how expansion teams are decided in American sports. We've seen it 3 or 4 times in the last 5 or 10 years alone. Whereas in football, that's not the case at all, because there are so many teams everywhere. And the teams at the top have earned their way to the top. They haven't been placed there because they've got a massive consumer base. They've earned their way to the top of the Premier League because they've climbed their way up the ladder and finished there based on merit. And this kind of thing, this deal where 15 teams already there, can't be relegated, there somewhat arbitrarily, there because they've got so much money, there because they signed on to this sinister deal, destroys that. It destroys that for them, because what do they have to play for? They're not getting relegated anyway. And it destroys that for every single other club and player who is told, if you succeed, you will reach the top of the sport. Because, again, this is exclusionary. It's elitist. It's 12 people taking the world's sport and turning it into their own playground. It's 12 people thinking that their interests overmatch the interests of billions of fans across the planet who want to see their clubs compete and work their way up in a fair way based on sporting merit. And this is something that completely tanks that. My last issue with well, not my last, I have plenty, but one of the biggest issues that I have with this whole thing is it affects the balance of wealth, as I mentioned. It also affects the balance of competition, because the UEFA and the FA and all those other governing bodies are being faced with a decision, right? They're being faced with a decision to either kick out those clubs who have joined the Super League and lose out on so much revenue, or keep them, and in England's case, allow 6 teams to compete against 14 others who've received this insane backing for competing in this exclusionary league. I mean, if you thought that Leicester winning the league was unheard of, kiss it goodbye. That will never happen again. And it's you can't say that in sports, but in this instance you can. That will never happen again. If you've got 6 English clubs competing in this Super League, not being relegated so they can count on that $500 million check every single August, spending money on Lord knows who, bringing in all the best talent in the world, and then going up and playing Palace away on a Friday night in October. It's the balance of competition will be destroyed if this kind of league goes through, because I mean, these big leagues, everyone always says how boring the top flight is, right? How it's always Bayern, it's always Dortmund, it's always Barcelona, Real Madrid, it's always Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea. And for some reason, this is something that they think will fix that. This will make it worse, because those teams, if they still compete in their domestic leagues, will just grow the gap in 2 ways. Because A, they're making more money, but because B, the clubs that don't get to play in this Super League are making less because the revenue's not there because all the sponsors have jumped ship and signed on with this Super League. So it's so sinister, it's so dark, it's I think Gary Neville called it a criminal act against the sport and its fans. And I don't think he's far off. I think this league it undermines everything that the sport is supposed to be about, with its history, its tradition, its standing in merit. It's disappointing that we've seen something like this actually materialize and that it's being allowed to materialize, because there are so many things wrong with instituting a league like this. I understand that on the surface, seeing Europe's best clubs go toe-to-toe every single week, season after season, is a fascinating prospect on the surface, which, fine. But beneath that very, very thin veil is just so much evidence and so many warnings of why this is such a detrimental idea, giving these 12 people the power to completely dig up and reconstruct an entire sport in a continent is really, really dangerous, and it will change genuinely. It will change modern football the way we know it. It will. I mean, if this league kicks off, like the second this league kicks off, the modern game is dead. It's really that simple, because the wealth inequality will just be so vast, and the morals of the sport and the core values of the sport will be out the window, because everyone's in it for money at this point. What's there to play for if you're Liverpool, who's just, I think, drawn with Leeds? It was 1-1. What's there to play for if you're Liverpool? Because it doesn't matter if you finish in the top 4, because you're playing in the Super League anyway. What are you playing for if you're Leeds? Because, if you finish top 4, you go and play in a Champions League that's become extremely watered down, and it does not mean nearly as much as it did. I mean, there's nothing to play for if this league goes through, because the thing that everybody will care about will be 75% the same year after year after year after year. And those 5 other teams that will get admission into the league will probably start to be pretty consistent year after year as well, because they're receiving this unbelievable financial backing just for playing in it one season. I mean, it's scary, and it's unbelievable how drastically this can change the landscape and the ecosystem of the sport that we all love to watch and play. This is 12 clubs dictating, telling the sport that they are the elite, according to themselves, which in many instances is not the case, and that they are bigger than the sport itself, because they're saying, we'll split off, start our own league. You want to kick us out of UEFA? So be it. You want to kick us out of the FA? So be it. You want to kick our players out of the World Cup? So be it. We'll start our own. I mean, it's 12 clubs, 12 CEOs, 12 presidents saying our needs, our goals, our ambitions are more important than 150, 200 years of history, tradition, merit, and more important than the preferences of 2 billion fans across the globe. It's scary. And the scariest part maybe is that after 2 or 3 years, once we really see the financial impact of this league take effect, there will be no other way for clubs to join the elite. Seriously, at least on the pitch, we could see more investments from billionaires in different countries. But in terms of on the pitch, there will be no way for other clubs to join the elite once this league's been going for 2 or 3 years, which is why I think it's so dangerous. And I think it's not what the sport needs. It's the opposite of what the sport needs. And I hope that people understand that. I hope that UEFA and FIFA and every other governing body understands that, even though they're corrupt in their own right, and we really shouldn't be praising them as heroes, even though in this instance they may end up being one. Which, by the way, there's issues in UEFA and FIFA as well, and I think this should serve as an impetus to enact reform, because they are not perfect organizations in their own right. They're far from it, but this is not the way to put pressure on UEFA and FIFA to reform their practices and to restructure the Champions League and to redistribute the wealth that the leagues generate. There are many, many better ways to do it. So I hope that this doesn't happen, because I think that as I've made very, very clear, I think it's detrimental to the long-term prospects of the sport. I think it's incentivized by greed, destroys the balance of competition. Like I said, it's incentivized by greed, which is never good. And it destroys the lone principle, which I think makes this sport so beautiful to watch and so intriguing from the top levels to amateurism is you survive and you improve based on your success on the pitch. That's the only defining factor in where you play is how well have you done on the pitch. It's all based on sporting merit, and this league goes completely against that. So I will be monitoring the story very, very closely. Hopefully you are as well, and hopefully this is the kind of thing that does not see the light of day, because it would definitely change the way that soccer is perceived and the way soccer is played at every single level. That's all I got. I'm going to quit ranting now. Don't have much else to say about it, at least for now. That might change. Same business as usual. If you liked this video, please go ahead and smash the like button. Hit the subscribe button for me. Always appreciate the support that you guys toss my way. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at WillFowler5 and follow me on Instagram at WFowler22. And follow London's Finest. London's Finest is the show that me and two of my buddies do every single Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. in the UK. We hop on a Zoom call and just discuss the biggest issues and storylines going on in the world of European, North American, international football. Whatever's happened, we get on and we talk about it at London's Finest QU. All of those links will be in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in what is hopefully a more exciting and a more optimistic video next time.